from your side, you're a podcaster, so you know the spiel already on that end. What's going on? How's everything with conference planning?
I mean, it is nestled among, many other amazing things. I mean, I think the good thing about conference planning at this stage is they don't necessarily need me or want me around.
It's a nice thing, huh?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like it is one of those, we talked about like how we build capacity, how we resource towards it. And now we've got amazing people doing amazing things and figuring out like what are the pieces in that like they want to bring in for tuning, feedback, etc. But yeah, it's a machine now. So
It's amazing, and I know it's growing fast every year.
all right, you may get a different perspective if you ask the machine though.
It's always that. You never want to know how the sausage is made, right?
Right,
You
right.
just you sit down at the table. Jonah, before we even get into that, then we're sharing this with our audience globally at this point. But tell us about you and the organization for those that might not know.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Jonah Schenker. I'm the district superintendent here at Ulster BOCES. We are one of 37 BOCES in New York. The structure of the BOCES, my role, as it relates to the structure is, so I'm the CEO of the BOCES. So that means overseeing the daily operations of the schools that we run, the services that we offer. And then I am the district superintendent, so I'm a direct report to the commissioner. And really, this system in New York is like you've got state ed, you've got the BOCES. Each one of the BOCES supports multiple districts in their region, and so we become kind of the conduit and eyes and ears to help support initiative that's coming out or bring voice up to hopefully inform initiative before it does come out. So it's a I was talking to somebody yesterday, so it's like that. However they break it in, break it down 40% on my time as district superintendent, 60% CEO for about 500%. That's about how it adds up. So it's great, and there's amazing transformations happening in New York that we are at the forefront of helping to shape. Not all of the what we need to do, but the kind of architecture and ecosystem of how we lead this forward and how we do it with a human-centric design approach.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I know how you said New York. I got my Yankee hat rocking today because I'm a
Totally.
New Yorker as well on that side. Jonah, you have two of the what I like to say glutton for punishment titles, CEO and superintendent combined. Right? Like I'm a startup education CEO for 20 plus years at this point. So I think plenty of glutton for punishment, but I don't have the superintendent in front of me. So
Yeah, yeah.
I give you credit on that side. That's something.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And it's interesting because all of our programs are shared students. So in our particular BOCES, 8 districts send in. So it is deeply relational with 8 other component superintendents as we think about our work in partnership with trying to provide for students, whether it's special education programming or therapeutic programming or career and technical education. So it's a complex enough job when you have your own system. It's even more complex when the students are coming from 8 unique communities kind of into programs. And each one of those superintendents is a human and has all of their wonderful aspects, and they all have boards. And so there's a lot of navigation to ensure that there's coherence to vision, programming, and all of that. So yeah, I love some good punishment.
And Jonah, I know your background specifically, you've had experience as a classroom teacher and admin in the urban setting, in the rural setting as well. And you mentioned the word human. I mean, that's everything we try to do with Thinkering is
Yeah.
how do we take the traditional education model, but somewhere along the lines, we believe we lost the human factor, right? We're sprinting towards a destination of GPAs and report cards and transcripts, but what happens in between in these magical years with the journey? So with even those 8 communities, what are you seeing? I mean, based on your experience as well.
Yeah. So, I would say the work prior to this year has been, pushing uphill a bit. We have the kind of awesome opportunity to be able to, have schools to do this work internally, helping others see what's possible and move the needle in their systems. And I think it's important to, to kind of note is that moving this work in a BOCES or in our system is different than in a component school district, right? Like we don't have community members voting on our budgets. We have purchased services. We don't have sports teams. Some of this kind of sacred cows of the system that allow tradition that gets in the way of progress. We don't necessarily have those pieces. And when students come to us, just by nature of coming to us, it's already an alternative to that. So we get this kind of built-in permission to think a little bit differently. But over the last decade in this work and in this role, not this role currently, but I've been with this BOCES for next year will be a 17th year, it'll be my 5th year in this role, and then but working with these school districts as previous roles as deputy and prior to that as building principal, there has been movement and some people kind of looking in saying like, well, that's not for us, or we don't have those type of kids. And yes, you do. They're called humans, as you pointed out. They're students. And the conditions for learning for humans, adult and student, are no different. I had this amazing conversation as I walked through. I was actually in a walkthrough of a school in San Diego, and I was with the commissioner, and we had some student ambassadors taking us around. And it would be that kind of walkthrough where at the end you might hear the comment of, "I can't believe how like extraordinary those students are," and kind of the response back to this from the school leader who was walking us around was, they're not extraordinary. They just have been placed in an environment that has given them opportunity that connects passion and purpose and mastery to where those students can see their identity in the work, like all the things that I think you described as like what might have been lost in between, right? Like we've got this like model of the American high school that says we're going to build standards and assessment at the end, and we forgot about all the things or the human experience in between it. And so I'll pause after this, but I think to your question, a year ago, New York rolled out New York Inspires, which is a multi-year plan to transform schools away from the industrial model, which is not designed for all, which is not about access. It's about a single academic pathway. And then all those things you mentioned, right? Like adding numeric grading, which is about ranking and sorting students, suggesting that learning needs to happen in 5 by 8 period blocks in siloed academics between September and June. And if you can't do that, you fail, or like all the things. And so in this kind of work, I'm always called to, unless we go at disrupting some of those foundational elements, the changes that we aspire, whether it's deeper learning, whether it's competency-based or portraits of a grad, or whether it's belonging work or DEI work or SEL work, doesn't matter what it is, those things become initiatives or change that is veneer on top of flawed foundation, and they will never really, really change the student experience.
No doubt about it. I couldn't agree more with you. And one of the things that we see constantly is that's the secret sauce, right? You're saying. I think it's really difficult for a lot of communities, schools, leaders to wrap their arms around it. I also think there's a major challenge. I'm dying to know your insight on this one. I heard a stat yesterday from someone that said within the next 3 years, there's going to be 35% turnover in superintendents and admins. And if you look at it right now, but a few weeks ago, I was talking about this stat too. They said the average soup today lasts about 2 years and 2 months in a school district. And if you look at it, this personally, no one even trusts you year one. So you're the outlier of who the hell is this guy? Year two, maybe you get one idea through, and then you're out the door. And the biggest factor that we always see, those places that succeed, it's culture. Right? Like that is the secret sauce. But what do you think leadership needs to do throughout the state, really, I would say, to wrap their arms around it? And then also, I'll double bag this one, but like how to create the pipeline for leadership.
Right. Yeah. So I think I'm going to grab this because I think to one of the points now, this whole learners, whole systems.
Awesome.
By Fullen and Gallardo and Sarah Fine, when you talked about this kind of like 2 year or 2.5 year window or lifespan, there's kind of 4 structures to this kind of evolved thinking of transformation. And one of them is steady work, right? Like it just takes the commitment to be doing this for a period of time. So how do we get steady work in a landscape of hyper turnover, in New York, where, tier 6 is the conversation that is not, a real strategic recruitment tool in the way that it's structured down. And there were some changes to it in this last budget round, and that idea of, communities and systems believing or building trust, right? Because we know trust comes from like repetitive action and follow through. and creating those conditions. So I think it's a pretty complex dilemma. I know it is, and so I would say that, and I think even in, I guess, the last piece of it, even in a healthy system, where historically, like, the superintendent is probably the least believable person in the system, right? Like you get up, you say these things, and like then you're gone, and like people are, all right, we got to do the work. Like, what's
I
this
mean,
guy?
it's a politician role, right? In a
Right,
sense.
right.
Yeah.
What, you want to help out? Like, come meet me on my prep period. I don't need less than a half hour at the beginning of the year. And so I think that's really where some of the kind of ways that we're thinking about working as an agency, and as we're talking about the system in New York, is it's moving to kind of co-design and coalition, right? Like, with communities and with teachers and with students for students, and moving again from that idea of like management leadership to like being able to do that work. And I think there are the things in the systems that like operationally just need to happen. I think where the nexus of burnout happens is when that becomes the only thing you do, when your daily job as a leader becomes defending and writing narratives that are allowed to thrive through how folks communicate via social media now. And I think the other reality is like the current state of the world, and without even getting political, right? This isn't how it's supposed to be. And so students are walking through thresholds of school doors carrying a whole lot. Adults are walking through thresholds carrying a whole lot. And so are the caretakers. Right? So like perfect storm. And when that system won't allow you to engage in, I think, what we talk about, which is like learning conditions for humans, when superintendents aren't connecting to the work with their own identity and passion and purpose and creativity and towards mastery and learning, with the elevated levels of stress and chaos of the world, like, that doesn't equal longevity. And so we can't necessarily change outside conditions of the world. So like, what are the controllables that we can control? And I don't know if, I don't know if it's at a place where like path forward is, and I'm not a negative person at all. I mean, but at the same time, like, the funding mechanisms and rising school costs and health insurance costs. So like to be able to hire some people to do this part of the work so that I could do this work, like, that may not be the case right now. So what do? I think this is the most interesting moment in time that is the most scary. However, there's something new, I believe, that is the answer, which is there's this appetite to create connection and coalition across systems that used to not talk or partner. And it may be like-minded people showing up at like conferences that are collegial and same vision, but like then they're back in. But there's almost like we actually have to come together in this moment to design broader and larger.
Mm-hmm.
If we're gonna make it through. And I'll kind of leave this part. Someone recently said, this storm that we're entering, it's time to like batten down our sails. And I said, I hear that, but I'm afraid on the other side of the storm, we arrive at the same destination. And so maybe we actually open our sails, connect the vessels, and sail through it, knowing it's going to be hard, knowing there's going to be loss, knowing all of those things, but maybe there's something new on the other side. And so that's what I'm personally holding as I think about kind of, and I don't typically make it a point of like nautical referencing, but I do love the ocean and boats. So there you have it.
I'll second that one completely. I'm such a positive person. My thing is like the glass is pouring over, not even half full. But I think you have to be in education, right? Like the ones that are at least sticking around and, in so many words, battening down the hatches of their career, of like, I'm going to ride this thing out. But I mean, on our side of Thinkering, this was the entire conceptualization of the organization. Of we're all operating in our own lanes,
Right.
we're all doing something, but we're not moving mountains. But if we did actually connect and collaborate, of not just like, Jonah, great conference, I'll see you next year. What are we doing during those 11 months and 22 days, right? In a sense, how do we help support one another? Because at the end of the day, the ones that are really getting hurt are the kids. And we don't have the time for that. That I was talking to a district leader the other day. They're like, "Oh, our budgets are out of whack, and we have to let go of some people." And I feel them completely on it. But that fourth grade kid is only going to be in fourth grade one time. And if we're focused on that and what could the experience be, then you need to start transforming. And I think the collaboration side in education, I'm fascinated on. I never really understood why there's such a barrier and challenge between a school, which historically should be the center point of a community. I think we've lost that along the way as well. But then the actual community. I mean, there's a district we were working with the other day that said, "Hey, we want to really lean into CTE." And we're having the hardest time finding professionals and experts. And my first question to them was, "Have you spoken to the parents or guardians?" No.
Right.
There's
Yeah. I
such
mean,
a wealth of talent.
yeah. And we've got this kind of one of these side projects that we have kind of working on that I think it is relevant to this moment of time is, and this ties into economic and workforce development. It ties into community revitalization and economic mobility. Um, and for so long, right, we've talked about a couple things which I think are important to state, right? College and career. I don't subscribe to college and career. College is not a destination. It's career, and there's a set of skills, and it's one. Doesn't matter where you're going. Doesn't matter what next is. 2-year, 4-year, workforce, travel, military, apprenticeship. There's one skill set that we know are the durable transversal skills that we ought to be preparing students for. There are some careers that require a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree. But when you ask that question of like, what do you really need to see in these students from college folks, higher education, industry, community, doesn't matter where in the country or the world, it's the same set of 5-6 words, right? Like that is the skill set. Fortunately, New York has adopted its portrait of a grad, which is kind of emanating that, which is awesome. I think the other piece is that kind of two things. One, for too long, we have talked about like next as an adult thing. And I believe this like intersection, meaningful intersection to recenter and restore story schools is about centering students as the future of the economy, right? Like we're building for them. And it doesn't mean we don't need adult education or re-engagement programs. All that can be true, but like we have to center the future in that work. And so we are working on, we've brought stakeholders from kind of all over the world together to think about this last dilemma, which is most of the good, I won't say any, most of the good intersectionality of K-12 higher ed community is relational and human dependent. So I'm Jonah, I'm passionate about this. I've got relationships. I do it. I leave. It's gone. And there isn't any systemness in it. And so what we're trying to create is kind of a playbook for communities to center students in this work, take them through a series of starting with empathy work and talking with those who would be impacted or experience the system, bring together these different entities to design outcomes for their community that are structural, systematic, and have longevity beyond the individual sitting there. And so it's one of those playbooks that has no answer, but just leans into design thinking, human-centric design to get at a process to do this work and begin to remove it from the ownership of the individual that's got either the political, financial, or relational capital in that current context.
Jonah, what helps you expedite that mission?
Time and money.
Always.
No, I mean, we're on track to have this playbook, go to print in the fall. Awesome. And launch it in January and engage locally to improve our conditions here and talk about how we can support others. And, a lot of the pockets of focus, and it's not exclusive to this, but where we'll be looking at it is, in our current context where IBM once lived and thrived, single out migration of this large entity, kind of collapse of an economy, and this slow and painful rebuild of a lot of like, we've been doing that for 10 years and we've got mediocre outcomes. Why are we still doing it that same way? So we'll have that kind of case study going internally. And what this community feels like the outcomes need to be might be different than a community in Ohio or Colorado or Rochester, but the process is what we're after.
Yeah. And I think that's key, especially in a day of AI. Like,
Yeah.
you look at it, we're working with teachers around the world from a fellowship perspective where they're coming in, creating their passion projects ultimately. But our big picture goal is in a few years, turn those around. And you don't have to replicate it because your community is going to be different. Your demographics going to be different. But how do you adapt and adopt that inspiration and work into your own community as well? And that's what I think this industry needs, right? This industry needs inspiration, it needs voice, it needs leadership that's able to guide them through, these rough sales. Jonah, last one, I'll throw at you. With the conference coming up, what could we expect?
I think you're going to feel, see, and hear the urgency of the moment and the power of community. I think that will emerge. And then, like, tangential to that is like amazing people bringing their work. But I think really what is going to emanate is that kind of that energy in this moment and the conditions that we can either cower down and batten down and weather it through, or we can embrace this moment boldly as one of the most profound moments of change. And I think, well, you know which one I'm in for. Um, and I think this conference brings together those folks who are wanting to lead that, needing partnership or colleagueship to feel that they can be part of it, and kind of everything in between. And as always, you can expect a lobster roll chuck and, some fancy trimmings that, again, are part of the experience. So, yeah, I'm excited.
It's human. We're excited to see you there. Jonah, you're the best.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it and look forward to the conference in July.
Awesome. I appreciate you. Thanks so much.
Talk soon.
We'll see you soon. Okay.